Good day folks, Sean here from Air Photography. So in today's video we're going to be doing a comparison of the new Insta360 Go S3 against the Action 2. I think this is a good comparison video because users who are interested in a small wearable camera, these two cameras perform very similarly and I think would be a good fit for that particular scenario. Now in this video we're going to be focusing on some of the characteristics of each camera. Although they are very similar, there are some big differences that could make one more appealing than the other to some types of users and what you're going to be using it for. We're going to be comparing some sample footage, the stabilization, and some audio. Hopefully by the time you're done watching this video, if you are in the market for a small wearable camera, it'll be a little bit clearer which one is the best fit for you. So let's start with the physical characteristics of both cameras. Now both cameras can be used as a full-fledged action camera. With the Action 2, we have the battery pods, and with the Go S3, we have the Action pod. In this configuration, they function very similar to a full action camera, and a lot of people do use them in that manner. But with both units, you can detach the main camera, and now you have a small, lightweight wearable camera that's not going to get in your way, or just a small camera that you can mount in ways you just can't a traditional larger camera. Both cameras have a touchscreen for changing settings or framing your shot. As you can see, the Go 3 has a much larger screen, which can be important in some scenarios. The Action 2 screen is quite small, but it does get the job done. You may have a problem if you have really large fingers. Sometimes changing the settings can be a little tricky. Myself, I've never had a problem with it. It's always performed the way I need it to. Now, when it comes to front-facing screens, which can be important again in some scenarios, with the Action 2, you do have to purchase the dual screen model. They have a variant that comes with just a battery, but if you do need a front-facing screen to help when you're lining up shots or vlogging, you will need to purchase the dual screen model. Whereas the Go 3, the screen actually flips out, so you can get a preview no matter whether you're filming from the front or back. Now, both cameras utilize a magnetic mounting system, which I think is extremely important. I really like magnetic mounts. It makes moving the camera from mount to mount quite easy. And with the magnetic mounts on both cameras, you can use them with the complete kit, or you can use them with just the camera modules. And that goes for the Insta360 Go 3 as well. You can see we can connect it to the Action pod, or we can connect it directly to just the camera module. Now, personally, I like the DJI magnetic system better. It's just easier to connect. It connects properly every time. The Insta360 one does work well, but sometimes I feel you have to fiddle with it a bit more to make sure you have a good connection. But at the end of the day, that's more of a personal preference. They both really function well for what they're intended to do. Now, if we take a look at just the camera modules, there's some key differences the way these capture and the way they function. You can see with the Action 2, we still have a preview screen when using just the camera module, which can be super beneficial. We can go in and change settings, line up our shots. Whereas with the Go 3S, we don't have that luxury. We have to use the Action pod to change the settings or connect it to the app. But with that said, with the Go 3S, when the camera is disconnected and we have this mounted independently, we can still use the Action pod to get a live video preview. We can still change all the settings. We can use this as a remote to stop and start recording. And that could be very beneficial to some users. If you have this mounted on a head strap or on a hat, you can pull this out of your pocket to make sure everything is lined up correctly. You've got the angle set correctly. Whereas the Action 2, that's not possible. You cannot use the base to control it remotely or get a video preview. That would be nice if DJI had implemented that, but unfortunately that's not possible. If you have this mounted on a head strap or somewhere out of view, you'll have to pull up the app, connect it to a smartphone if you want to make sure that everything is angled correctly. So both have their pros and cons there. With the Action 2, you have a preview screen built right into the camera module. With the Go 3S, you don't have that, but you can use this as a wireless preview. Now let's talk a little bit about durability. Having that built-in screen on the back is a nice feature, but it can also be a hindrance for some users as well. It makes the camera very fragile. You know, sometimes with these action cameras, things happen. I mount these small action cameras on my RC vehicles quite frequently, and as mentioned, things happen. The Insta360 Go 3S or the Go 3 is just much more durable. There's not really a lot that can break on it. With the Action 2, we have the back screen that can shatter, and of course we have the front screen. And unfortunately with the Action 2, this front screen is not user replaceable, so if you do damage it, the back screen or the front screen, you're going to have to send it off to DJI or purchase a new one. Whereas with the Go 3S, that front lens cover is removable. You can buy replacements fairly inexpensively, so if you happen to scratch it or shatter it, it can be replaced. But due to its robust build, replaceable lens, there's not really a lot of damage you can do to it. So that could be important to some people depending on how you're going to be using it. Now when it comes to storage and batteries, both are similar but a little bit different. When using just the camera modules, they have built-in batteries. So once the battery is depleted, you have to insert it back into the bases to continue using it. Same with the Action 2. The problem then is once the battery on the Action Pod or the base runs out, you're done. You have to stop and recharge the whole camera. The only benefit of the Action 2 is you can actually buy replacement modules. So you could technically have several of these with you when out filming. So when one runs out, you can just simply replace it. But these are fairly expensive compared to normal traditional action camera batteries. So that is something to keep in mind, but at least that is an option. Now when it comes to internal storage, both have built-in memory. You can now get the Action 2 with 128 gigabytes of storage, same with the Go 3S. But the Action 2 has the bonus of having a memory card built into it as well. So when you're filming in this configuration, you can film to either the internal memory or the memory card, and you can transfer the footage over very easily. When that memory card's full, you can put a replacement in if need be. Whereas the Go 3S, you can't do that. There is no memory card slot available. Now they do have an accessory that allows you to offload the footage to a memory card out in the field, but that is an additional purchase. Now obviously when using just the camera module on the Action 2, you're not able to record to that memory card, so you are limited to the internal memory. So those are some of the physical attributes of each camera. So let's kind of get into some of the footage and the capabilities of each one. Now both cameras can record in 4K and both do a really good job. The footage actually looks really, really good. The maximum frame rate on the Go 3S, however, is 30 frames per second, whereas with the Action 2, you can do 4K 30, 4K 60, and you can even go all the way up to 4K 120. That allows you to capture some nice slow motion. Now you can still capture slow motion, 8x slow motion on the Go 3S, but it is going to be in a lower resolution, but it still actually looks quite good. Now while we're talking about 4K and different frame rates, one thing to note about the Action 2, and this could be very important to some users, is that this camera overheats very easily. Now it's going to depend on the scenario in which you're filming and the frame rate on how quickly it does overheat. Whereas the Go 3S just does not overheat. I've done multiple tests in different scenarios and I have not had this thing overheat once. In this quick demonstration of overheating, you can see the Action 2 overheated at 17 minutes and 51 seconds. It got too hot and shut down. Whereas the Go 3S was able to record until the battery ran out, which was at 32 minutes. Now with that said, I've actually had power connected to just the camera module to see how long it would record for without overheating. And I shut the test off at 2.5 hours. It hadn't overheated yet. So this camera just does not overheat when recording at 4K 30. Whereas mentioned, the DJI Action 2 overheated under 18 minutes at 4K 30. Now, if you're going to be filming at a higher frame rate, 4K 60, it's going to overheat even quicker. In this clip here, you can see when recording at 4K 60, it overheated at 8 minutes and 38 seconds. Now again, that's filming at a desk. If you're outside with air movement, chances are it's going to record a little bit longer, but there's still a good chance that it will overheat, especially on a hot day if there's sun beating on it. So it just really depends on the scenario. Whereas with your Go 3, you just don't have to worry about that. Now myself, that overheating issue has never been a problem. Usually when using these small cameras, it's when I'm capturing B-roll or small clips. I'm not recording for hours at a time. So for me, it's not a limiting factor, but for other people that could be important. Now something else that could be important to some users is when recording with the Action 2, everything is just in traditional files. You can take the memory card out or transfer the files over. It's ready to share. You can put it into any editor you want. Everything is just ready to go. When using the Go 3S, if you're filming just regular video or photos, again, they're in traditional files. You don't have to bring it into the Insta360 app to process it. You can just transfer it over and it's instantly ready to go and shareable. However, some of the modes and some of the features require the content to be processed in the app. And that includes slow motion or free frame video and a few other files. When recording regular video, you don't have to, but that's something to keep in mind. Now, in my opinion, I've gone over the footage very thoroughly. I would have to say that the Action 2, when it comes to stabilization, has the edge. I think it's a little bit better on the Action 2. The Go 3 does have really good stabilization, but in some scenarios, there's still a little bit more movement I find with the Go 3S. It's very minimal, but even if you look at this walking clip, you can see with the Go 3S, sometimes there's some side-to-side movement, a little bit more than with the Action 2. Again, very minimal, but that is something to keep in mind. It becomes a little bit more apparent when you're on something like a dirt bike or a mountain bike on rough terrain. You can see a little bit more jitter in the video. I'll just play some more samples here for you just so you can get a good look, get a good feel for both. Alrighty, I am going to go for a quick jog here. Do not laugh at me, I am not the best runner, but just so you can get a feel of what the stabilization is like while running or jogging or anything with a lot of movement. Do not laugh. But yeah, so that was some stabilization while doing a little bit of light jogging. Now, if shooting vertical video is important to you, I find it a little bit easier to do with the Go 3S. Their magnetic mounting system just makes it a little bit easier, especially when using the pendant. Cameras come with a chest pendant that makes it easy to get chest mounted footage. With the Go 3, you can just flip it to any direction you need, and it's going to record in that aspect ratio. Whereas the Action 2, you can't do that the way it's set up. If you want to get vertical video, you can flip the camera, but you will have to purchase a third-party mount that allows you to do that. So it's a little bit easier with the Go 3 if you want to switch back and forth between horizontal and vertical video. On top of that, they have a feature called free frame video, which essentially captures both vertical and horizontal. And then when you process it in the Insta360 app, you can export it in whatever format you need. Again, you do have to process it in the app, but that does make it convenient if you're going to be filming for multiple platforms. Of course, you can do that with your Action 2, but you do have to manually crop it, and you're not going to have full resolution. Now, something else that's important to note is that you can connect an external microphone to the Action 2. You don't need any adapters. You can plug a USB microphone or a USB lavalier or a USB wireless microphone system right into the USB port on the Action 2, and you're going to be able to have nice quality audio if needed. With the Go 3S at this point, at the time of filming this video, there's no way to connect any type of microphone. It doesn't support Bluetooth microphones, and even plugging one into the side doesn't work. Now that could change with a firmware update. I hope they do add that capability, but as of right now, there's no way to do it. Now with that said, the audio on both cameras are excellent. So even without connecting a microphone when you're filming on the Go 3, even for vlogging, you're going to have nice quality audio. So I'm going to play an audio sample here from both cameras. So now we're just going to do a quick audio sample so you can get a feel of what each camera sounds like using the built-in microphones. I'll put a label down in the bottom left-hand corner so you know which camera the audio source is coming from. I'm just going to play the same clip back twice, and that way it's equal. We've got some ambient noise, there's some water running in behind me, there's some birds chirping, and I'm standing about 3 feet away from the cameras. So again, this is an audio test using the built-in microphones on the Insta360 Go 3S and the DJI Action 2. So now we're just going to do a quick audio sample so you can get a feel of what each camera sounds like using the built-in microphones. I'll put a label down in the bottom left-hand corner so you know which camera the audio source is coming from. I'm just going to play the same clip back twice, and that way it's equal. We've got some ambient noise, there's some water running in behind me, there's some birds chirping, and I'm standing about 3 feet away from the cameras. So again, this is an audio test using the built-in microphones on the Insta360 Go 3S and the DJI Action 2. Both cameras can be controlled by voice, which can be important in some scenarios. But with the Go 3S, you have the added option of using gestures to control it. Now that's not something that everybody's going to make use of, but it can come in very handy in some situations. It's actually something that I've been using quite a bit. Both cameras have companion apps that allow you to easily transfer footage or do some minor editing. The Insta360 app perhaps is a little bit more robust, but both work well for what they're intended to do. When using just the camera modules, both cameras are waterproof, but you cannot take the pods in the water. Only the camera modules are waterproof. So as you can see, both cameras are very similar, and I think at the end of the day, no matter which one you choose, you're going to be pleased with. If there's anything that I forgot that you think would be important to a potential user, different aspects or features of one that might be more important to some people, post that down in the comments, as I'm sure people who are doing the research would greatly appreciate it. Well, that's it for this video. Hopefully you found it had value. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.